So, here we are, the King's Scout Award. This is the highest award for scouting in the UK, and I believe also in the Commonwealth too. It has a lot of benefits to having earned it. If you are thinking of attempting to do your King's Scout Award, please definitely go for it. There's a lot of benefits that come from it. For example, once you've achieved the award, you are able to go to Windsor Castle or a similar royal holding, depending on your location. If you're in Scotland, for example, it's a different location, but you are then able to parade and meet royalty, meet Bear Grylls, and your family can come down and see you do it. And that's considered one of the highest honours in scouting, as it's the only time in the UK that scouts are formally able to parade on royal property. And actually, in fact, where we parade is never paraded by any other group or section of the army, for example, or whatever the case might be. It's unique to scouting. This is a very prestigious award, as I mentioned. One part of it, is the Duke of Edinburgh's Gold Award, which I highly recommend you do at the same time as completing your King Scout Award. By completing your Duke of Edinburgh's Gold Award, you're also allowed to attend an event at Buckingham Palace. So essentially, by completing the King Scout Award, you get to go to two separate royal properties to celebrate your achievement. Additionally, the King Scout Award is worn on the very front of your Scout uniform, and once you've earned it, you can wear it forever. So it's a very big achievement, and it is considered the most important award for any Scout to achieve. There was recently a change from it being the Queen Scout Award, which had a different design, that being blue with a smaller crown. The King Scout Award, effective I believe February 2022, or aroundabouts there, changed to be this design and to be the King Scout Award. It may have been as early as October 2022, but same difference essentially. The way to earn your King Scout Award most easily is to have done your Chief Scouts Platinum and Chief Scouts Diamond Award before completing your King Scouts Award, as by completing those two awards you reduce your requirements of what you have to do for your King Scouts Award. If you're listening to this and you are in the Explorer or Network section and you've not completed your Chief Scouts Diamond Award or Chief Scouts Platinum Award, please see my videos on them, please research those, and it's worth mentioning that there is higher requirements here for this award clearly than those two awards, which includes the minimum time in service required before you can start earning towards these awards. So for example, for the Chief Scouts Diamond Award, it is 12 months of being an Explorer Scout before you can start earning towards your Diamond Award, and it's a very similar situation with the King Scout Award. Requirements for the award are quite simple here. Number one, essentially be age 16 or older and complete it before your 25th birthday. What this boils down to is that even though you can start Explorers at the age of 14, you have to be 16 before you can start towards this award. Anything you've done before the age of 16, other than Nights Away, do not count towards the King's Scout Award. And as it says there, that's not correct, sorry. The requirements are relatively simple for the King Scout Award, surprisingly enough. Be age 16 or older to start the award and complete the award before your 25th birthday. That is a hard limit, essentially, is once you're 25 and older, you cannot actually earn towards this award or even complete the award. So if you are a leader and you're relatively young, I'd say still try and get this award, even if you've never completed your Platinum or Diamond awards. But obviously, if you're over 25, then this is essentially just a video for information as to how you can help young people to gain the award. It says there, be age 16 or older to start the award. So that is a hard limit for that. However, it's worth mentioning that, as I mentioned, you can start and complete your Chief Scouts Diamond Award and Chief Scouts Platinum Award before the age of 16. So if you're under the age of 16, please refer to my videos on that. Moving on to number 2 here, be a member of either Explorer Scouts or the Scout Network, or a combination of both, for at least 18 months to complete the award. What that means is you should never see a Explorer Scout who is, if you do 18 months after 14 or 14 and a half, they should be older than that before they have their King Scout Award. And equally, if you are joining Scout Network late, if you have not been in scouting before and you've not started earning towards this, you're going to have a hard time completing this award if you're like 23 and a half or something along those lines. So it's worth, if you are going to go for the King Scout Award, to do it as early as possible. Number 3, be a member of Explorer Scouts or Scout Network at the time you complete the award. As I say, there is a hard cut-off at the age of 25. On your 25th birthday, you cease to be a member of Scout Network. And obviously, if you are not actually attending to different meetings as an Explorer Scout, you can't really earn towards this award. You have to be going consistently to an Explorer unit and actually be on their roster to actually count anything towards it. And additionally, if you're a Scout Network, obviously Scout Network goes by different rules. You don't need to be as active, but you have to make sure that you're actually registered with a district or with a county as a Scout Network member. So if you're not sure that you are, please make sure that you are before you start doing things towards this award. And number 4, as it says there, essentially you have to only start working towards it and count your activities towards achieving this from the 16th birthday. As it says there, activities and nights away completed in achievement of the Chief Scouts Platinum and Diamond Award can be counted. So if you are before the age of 16, please look into those 2 separate awards, and those nights away and the ICVs especially that you do for those can be counted towards a King Scout Award. I'll be talking a little bit more about the ICV requirements, which is the International Community and Values requirements for the King Scout Award, in a second. But it's essentially the case that the ICV values for Diamond and Platinum are lower requirements than the King Scouts version of the ICV values, and you do essentially 2 of those ICVs for Platinum and 4 of them for Diamond, but you can count those up into each other. And the King Scout Award requires 6, so actually if you've completed your Diamond and your Platinum awards, you only need to do 2 more ICV values as opposed to doing all 6. The next requirement here is to complete 18 nights away as an Explorer Scout or a Scout Network, at least 12 of which must be camping. So this is something to really think about and make sure that you've done this. If you're not sure, please ask your Explorer Scout leader or your Group Scout leader for information about which camps you've been on. Nowadays, with the invention of OSM, which is essentially a tool that leaders use to track the number of nights away people have done, it should be fairly easy for your leader to pull out the amount of nights away you've done. But I'd like to just emphasize the fact that this does not count any nights away you've done before you were invested as an Explorer Scout. It has to be 18 nights away as an Explorer Scout or a Scout Network member. However, don't fret if you are below the requirement. If you ask around in your district, so that is sort of organizational level above your group or your unit, then I'm sure you can find plenty of different groups and units outside of yours that you can go to their camps and help out there and actually count up towards these nights away. And failing that, you can even contact your Scout county, and they will definitely have a register of different things you can do, or people that they can message on your behalf, essentially, to get you towards these requirements. So even if you're towards the end of the eligible period for this, you can quite easily snap up those nights away. One thing worth mentioning is that really you can't just do these nights away by yourself. It has to be an official scout event, has to be permitted or passported correctly with all the admin that goes into that. So please do ask your leaders, ask your district about this. Don't try and sneak things under the radar in terms of, going camping with your friends somewhere or in your back garden, because Gilwell Park, the UK headquarters for scouting, they review very closely what you've done for your King Scout Award because it's so prestigious. And if anything looks even remotely out of place there, they will ask about it. And if you can't justify it appropriately, then you're in for a shock. I suppose you're in for a shock. As it says there, nights away use this. As it says there, nights away used for this requirement must be different from the nights away undertaken for one of the 5 challenge activities, all those used for the ICV list, but can include the nights away used and nights away requirement for the Chief Scouts Platinum or Chief Scouts Diamond Award. What this means is that you cannot use your residential nights or your expedition nights for your example, your Duke of Edinburgh's Gold Award towards these nights away. So for your residential, you'll be doing a handful of nights away. For your expedition, you'll be doing a handful of nights away. Those do not deduct from that 18 or that 12. They have to be separate. If you try and count them together, it will not be approved. And equally, it says there, all those used for your ICV list. So for example, if you are doing the Scouts of the World Award as part of your King Scout Award as one of the ICV requirements, or you're doing the Explorer Belt, those also do not count towards this. They have to be separate to those. As it says at the bottom there, nights undertaken as an Explorer Scout Young Leader or by Scout Network members as an adult leader may count. So this means essentially if you are volunteering at a camp, then that does count. So I would definitely recommend, as I say, if you are lacking behind on this, or if you are, just coming into the age of being able to help out as a young leader and things, do definitely get in touch with your unit or your group and sign up as a young leader or sign up as an adult leader if you're in Scout Network, because that's a very easy way to sort of in the background make sure you tick off these requirements once you actually get around to having completed your Platinum and your Diamond awards. Then when you get to your King's level, by being a young leader for a couple of years, you'll have gone to enough camps and things like that to actually almost automatically tick off this requirement for nights away. Moving on, the ICV list, as I mentioned, this is the most important part, or I'd say, other than your holding of the Gold Duke of Edinburgh's Award, is that you have to complete 6 activities in total, 2 from each topic area of the ICV list. A minimum of 2 must be from the King's Scout Award ICV list, and the others can be from the Platinum or Diamond lists. What this means is that essentially, as it says there below it, if you completed your Platinum, you've done 2 of the activities and need to do 4 more. If you completed your Diamond Award, you've done 4 and need to do 2 more. So if you haven't completed your Diamond or your Platinum Awards, or if you're too young to complete your King Scout Award straight away, I would absolutely try and do your Platinum or Diamond Award first, because it will reduce the amount of ICV requirements you have to do. and the ICV requirements tend to be the most time-absorbing part of the award, outside of the Duke of Edinburgh's Gold Award section. So it's another reason as to why you don't want to jump straight into the King Scout Award, and you want to do these preliminary awards first, because doing 6 ICVs is a lot more daunting than doing 2. Moving on. These are the ICVs. We start with international. There's international, community, and values. For international, we have this. You may notice that these are harder requirements to do than the ones that we saw for the ICV list for the platinum and the diamond videos that I did. I will still walk you through this. Number 1, complete your Explorer Belt or be mentored to an Explorer Belt team. I would highly recommend anyone to pick up their Explorer Belt if they can before they leave scouting. You get a number of different things on your adult leader uniform and on your Explorer uniform, etc., that identify you as having completed it. It is, in my opinion, the second most prestigious award in scouting, right after the King Scout Award. So if you want to go that extra length and be that much more sort of stand out as opposed to people who haven't done their awards, then please go ahead and do this. Just again, the nights that you do for your Explorer Belt do not count towards that Knights Away requirement that we saw earlier. Also worth mentioning that if you are an Explorer and you are heading towards the time when you're in network, then you want to do your Explorer Belt now rather than later, because if you are still in Explorer Scouts, you can join an Explorer Belt expedition very, very easily with a lot of support to do it. Whereas if you are an adult and you're in network scouting, generally you have to go off and organise your own Explorer Belt expedition by yourself. And having experience of that personally, it is much more difficult than just joining a county expedition for Explorer Belt as an explorer. So please, please, please do try and do your Explorer Belt by the time you leave Explorers. Number 2, take part in a project with an international development organisation, present to your unit, scout network, or relevant audience. As it says there, being an active part of the project means doing something substantial. Given this as a King's ICV list, it'll have to be more substantial than we saw for the Diamond and Platinum. So I imagine you've got to have some elements of being a supervisor or being a planner or something like that, really. But do seek your own local guidance on how much this should be to count towards. However, I will say that unlike the Diamond and Platinum Awards, which are signed off locally, or at least at a county level, the King Scout Award is signed off on a UK level, with UK oversight from Gilwell Park and Scout headquarters there, and they are very interested in making sure that people actually have their requirements fully ticked off and everything is above board. So it's better to overestimate what you have to do than underestimate, and have to redo one of these ICV values. Number 3, take an active part of a camp in another country, for example, a jamboree or mute, and present your experience to a unit. Number 3, take an active part in a camp in another country, for example, a jamboree or moot, and present your experience to your unit, scout network, or other relevant audience, such as another section. Again, active part here doesn't mean just attending. It means actually helping to run it, or running a section of it, helping to plan it. There's a lot of things in the UK that you can do for this kind of thing. And as it says there, it has to be in another country. So it's worth mentioning to county especially. They're the ones who tend to organise jamboree events and things like that about this. Or if you have a county expedition to a different country, you can do that. But again, things like the Explorer Belts wouldn't count for this, I don't think, especially as that's already part of number 1 anyway, but worth pointing out. Personally, I would try to skirt away from doing number 3 because it sounds like quite a difficult one to try and organise. and especially when there are, for example, number 4 there. So as it says, take an active part in an international camp in the UK in a role other than being a participant. So yeah, as I mentioned before, for number 3, you can't just attend. You have to actually do something towards supervising, you know, other people there or helping to run an event. Generally, I would highly encourage people to do that anyway. It's not very difficult to help your leaders who are taking you to an international event, or even as it says here, an international camp in the UK. And that goes a lot further to being robust to scrutiny, as opposed to just saying, I went to X camp. Saying, I went to X camp and I helped do this, or I helped run this, or I ran this, or I planned this. It's a lot more compelling of an argument as to why you should get your King Scout award than just saying, I went to X camp. If you're looking for an international camp to go to in the UK, there are plenty. Cheshire runs what's known as a chamboree. There is a whole bunch of other ones in the UK you can go to that count for an international camp. I will just emphasize the fact that international camp doesn't mean a camp with an international theme. That means that people from other countries have to have attended. So please bear that in mind. Number 5, take part in a project at a campsite abroad, such as Candlesteg. So yeah, as I say, if you go there and do some kind of maintenance or other kind, you could go there and do some kind of maintenance. You could go there and be a warden. You could do a whole bunch of different things. Again, it's a little bit harder to do than the other things on this list, but feel free to if you want to go abroad. Number 6, organise a series of 6 evening programs for your unit on an international theme agreed with your mentor. This is pretty close to number 7, which is the same thing but with another section. Rather than doing it with your unit, I would highly recommend you do it with your section. Rather than doing it with your unit, I'd highly recommend doing it with a different section, even if it's a different section I'd highly recommend doing it with a different section, as that would count towards your Young Leader and U-Shape awards, whereas the number 6 there would only count towards your U-Shape awards. And once you leave Explorer Scouts at the age of 18, the U-Shape award does not stay with you, whereas the Young Leader awards, there are several of them, and they stay with you even after you've left even Scout Network. You keep those awards with you for the most part. Number 8, complete the Scouts of the World Award. I would highly recommend that you complete the Scouts of the World Award before you leave scouting. It is one of the harder awards to do. It is 80 hours of volunteering, and you have to have gone to what's known as a Scouts of the World Discovery event to begin it, during which they will sort of run you through how to plan, manage, and deliver a project, make sure that your idea is okay and sound. And it's a residential event, essentially, so you stay over for a couple of days. You do around 15 hours of classroom work about it, which sounds like a lot, but actually it's very fun because you're there with other scouts who are there for similar reasons from across the country, which is very cool, actually, having done that myself. But actually, one of the things to emphasize about Scouts of the World Award is that 80 hours might sound like a lot, but you have until you finish Scout Network to complete it. So if you actually attend that discovery event while you're an explorer, no, hang on. It's worth mentioning that while it is 80 hours, if you attend that as soon as you become a Scout Network at the age of 18, that gives you 7 years to complete your project, because you have until the age of 25 to complete it. And 80 hours over 7 years is not a lot of time. But equally, it's very flexible. So if you actually want, are later on in your time with Scout Network, and you want to make sure you get this award, because the Scouts of the World Award is one of the few awards you can keep on your adult uniform once you've left the network, and keep that on your uniform forever. If you want to tick off 80 hours, it's not like the Duke of Edinburgh's awards where you have to do it over a certain period of time. You could spend 2 weeks or something just doing straight Scout of the World Award volunteering, full time at somewhere. like a scout camp or your local scout camp, your county scout camp or whatever, and that would all count towards this, and you could get it signed off very quickly during a summer or during time off work or something very easily. And number 9 here, complete any activity of a similar nature agreed beforehand. I would recommend not going for this particular option, especially if you've used it at least, once or twice when doing your Diamond Award or your Platinum Award, because the more of the sort of agreed beforehand options you have, the less likely Gilwell is going to not question it. So I'd stick to the pre sort of I stick to the standard options here rather than going for number 9. And as I say, if you've done that number 9 option for a couple of things in your past as a platinum or a network award, then Gilwell is likely to have something to say about that. Moving on, we have the community aspect. So the C of ICV, as it says here, research and participate in a local environmental community-based project to make an improvement in the community or environment. Could be within Scouts or another organisation. Present your experience to a unit or your Scout network. I highly recommend you do this as part of Scouting because it's much easier to get that signed off and to get it all organised if it's all part of the same umbrella. And with the correct oversight, and you have people within Scouting who can sign off on it if need be. This can be almost anything. It's quite an open one, but generally it's something that is quite substantial rather than just a single day of work of something. I would give that a weekend or longer of this kind of project to make it work. Some examples would be maybe a community garden somewhere or a pop-up library that you could erect somewhere. There's a lot of different things, Bolson bashing weekend or something, or maybe just helping with your local National Trust, something like that. Number 2, complete the requirements to achieve stage 4 of the Community Impact Stage Activity Badge. I would not do this one really, if you could, because the Community Impact Stage Activity Badge, while it's a great idea, and Scout headquarters and things like that have made it for a reason, there are international versions of this that we're not allowed to have in the UK, like the Messages of Peace badge, which actually do stay on your uniform into adulthood. However, the Community Impact Stage Activity Badge is just another activity badge, and you can't have it on your network uniform or your adult uniform. So if you can do something else instead, I'd recommend doing that, because in my personal opinion, having one more round badge on uniform doesn't stand out very much. I would personally have preferred, something more standout, something that stays onto your adult uniform. But it's up to you. If you want to do this instead, then you can look up the requirements. But stage 4 is the highest level of this badge, which is, I believe, 18 months or something of continued effort. And I'm not sure if this overlaps with Duke of Edinburgh's Gold volunteering. I couldn't tell you that for certain. So I'd recommend doing something else personally, but it's up to you. Number 3, take an active part in growing and developing Scouts in your local community. This is quite an open one, quite broad, but it has to be something that Gilwell Park and Scout UK headquarters would agree is actually an active role in growing and developing. What I would suggest is that there are plenty of opportunities in, for example, your district. Usually districts are looking for a youth commissioner or deputy youth commissioner, deputy youth lead volunteer, things like that. And that is certainly a way that you can grow and develop Scouts in your local community. And getting involved in a district level in terms of Scouting is actually very interesting. Speaking as someone who is a member of the district leadership team, it's actually very, very interesting because you're seeing Scouting from a broader perspective than just at a group level or a section level. And you're getting more involved in how you actually shape Scouting locally and how you can make it just better and improve it over time. And they're always looking for, as you say, U-shape, youth-led scouting. So it's if you ask your district about this, I guarantee you that they will find something in the district level for you to do to help out. And even if it's something like being active support and going around to scout groups that require a little bit of oversight, a little bit of experience, your experience, if you are an explorer scout or a scout network person who's gone through scouting for a number of years, chances are you have more experience in what scouting should look like than some leaders who may have just joined, less than 5 years ago do, who've never been in scouting before. And you can really leverage that experience in a really meaningful way. And speaking as a scout leader and someone in district, I found that really, really, really satisfying, and it's one of the best things I do actually during my weeks now is to help sort of shape and improve scouting locally. Very, very cool. And number four, we mentioned before, potentially the Scouts of the World Award. Um, this is something I would definitely recommend doing, but it's up to you whether you want to do it now or you want to do it after you've got your King's Award, because 80 hours of time is quite a lot to invest in addition to the standard. It's up to you if you want to do it as part of your King's Award or do it after your King's Award, because adding that extra 80 hours of time you have to do will probably delay the time at which you could complete the award, as opposed to doing something else. But that's not to say that Scouts of the World Award is not a good award, because I think I personally rank it as maybe joint second or perhaps third most important award in scouting. And I've talked a little bit about that before, and I believe I'll have a video up about the Scouts of the World Award relatively soon. And of course, we have the number five, which I mentioned in the last slide, which is you can do essentially whatever is similar to these different levels of participation. But again, the more you rely on this number five here, the more it's going to raise the eyebrows and gill well. So be careful with that one, especially as I definitely recommend doing number three there if you could for the community aspect here. Very, very cool. Moving on, the values aspect. So again, I may have mentioned some previous videos about the Platinum and Diamond Award, but it's much easier to do the values aspect if you're religious than if you're not. Because as it says there, for example, take part in leading time for spiritual reflection for others. This can be, helping to run a Sunday school or, whatever the local equivalent is for you in terms of your religion or spirituality. And it's kind of difficult to do this, especially if you are atheistic or of no particular religion, because then who is exactly going to listen to you or be part of that time for spiritual reflection? It essentially cancels out this number one here, unfortunately. So, if you're a part of a church or you're a deacon or whatever the case might be, it's very easy for you to get this one ticked off. And it sort of doesn't have a particular time frame here for how long you should be doing it. But I would recommend doing it for the length of something like the Duke of Edinburgh's Award. If you can do this alongside what you're doing in the Duke of Edinburgh's Award. If you go to church anyway, for example, if you just stay a little bit longer and help out, or be part of those services or whatever, then that'd be a great idea. Number two, moving on here, taking part in a project, examining your own faiths and beliefs, understanding how they can affect you, present to a relevant audience. This I would recommend doing would be not just looking within your own faith, but looking at other faiths and comparing and contrasting and saying, why it made your faith stronger, your belief stronger, or why that's affected how you view certain things. Personally, I think that looking at other religions and other faiths outside your own is vital to being able to live in a multicultural and multi-religious society. So absolutely, I'd recommend doing this. If only so that when you meet someone of a different particular worldview than you, that you can actually talk to them and relate to them on some level, which is quite useful, especially given, the third law of scouting is we belong to a worldwide family of scouts. And if you only have one particular perspective on that, there's a lot of different religions and different scouts, different spiritualities around the world. So that's something that we explore quite heavily in the Scouts of the World Award as well. So it's worth mentioning that. Number 3, run a series of activities with another section, explore Scout values and what they mean to you. Reflect on that. So this, running a series of activities with another section is pretty important for your U-Shape and Young Leader Awards, which are very, very important. You get a lot of cool things for completing your Young Leader program, which I'll cover later on. But I definitely aim towards activities for your ICVs that include doing things for younger sections, because it really does help out with getting those additional awards and getting those things like the Young Leaders Awards. If you've already done a lot of volunteering with Scouting for things like your Duke of Edinburgh's Awards with, Beavers, Cubs, or Scouts, if you've already volunteered a lot with them, chances are you might already have basically met the requirements for your Young Leaders Awards. So if you have done that, definitely check out the Young Leaders Awards and my video on that to see if you've actually already met all the requirements, because you might just get some free awards and free things to put on your uniform that actually stay there until, the end of time, essentially. So it's worth mentioning that. And again, exploring Scout values is quite a secular thing. There's a Scout law and Scout promise, and the Scout law is doesn't change depending on religion and things. It stays the same. The Scout law, things like being trusted, being kind, and it's worth sort of running through why that's important, especially in the modern day. That's a very easy way of doing it, and it says a series of activities, so it's not a particular amount. But again, the more you do, the more regularly you do this kind of stuff, the less Gilwell's going to raise an objection potentially about it. Number 4 here, organise a series of 6 activities for your unit or another section to explore different faiths and beliefs. Yeah, I definitely recommend doing this kind of thing. As I mentioned, you can do this with your unit, but you're not going to get those Young Leader Awards. Do it with a different section if you can. Different sections in your group or in your district are always looking for more volunteers. They're always looking for more help. There's always someone out there who could use you. Even if you think you'll be useless or do nothing as a young leader, or if you're a network member and you don't think you can really stomach it, if you're a network member and you don't think it's for you, trust me, there is your experience with Scouting, even if it's only a few years of experience, will mean a lot. It will mean a lot to those adults. And 6 activities is not really a lot of things to do. You can do that in a couple of months if you want to. Really, it doesn't take much time, especially if you're doing this as part of your volunteering aspect for Duke of Edinburgh's awards. You can actually do that concurrently, I believe. So it's worth mentioning that. And number 5, complete Scouts to World Award. We've already covered this, but refer to those previous slides that I mentioned in regards to that. And finally, number 6, we've already covered this as well, but I'd steer away from using these kind of, agreed activities, because they can be a little bit wishy-washy, and it's difficult sometimes for Gilwell to really want to sign off on things that are all number 6, for example, rather than the preset ones, which are not difficult to do, that it's worth doing those if you can. Moving on. And there's some additional requirements as well, even though you've done your nights away and your ICVs. The most important thing is that ultimately you want to make a presentation to a suitable audience about what you did for your King Scout Award. Now, this is really important, really important. Not just because you're showing off what you did and how cool you are and how dedicated you are to scouting and having got this award. You have to get this signed off by a commissioner, or as they call them now, a lead volunteer. It doesn't really explain here, really, but as it says there at the bottom, a commissioner must sign off on your King Scout Award. And generally they will want to come to your presentation too. So don't be surprised if they're there and they ask some questions and things. It's just part of the role. And it's pretty important to sort of show off your stuff, because it's a good example. It's a good way to get yourself recognised at a district level, which is very cool. And you may not know, but there are things like the Commissioner's Commendations, which are adult service recognitions you can get from doing cool things. And if you do a particularly good King Scout Award, which has done a lot for local scouting, then you may just automatically get that purple ribbon there that you can wear on your uniform forever. That's very cool. But the most important thing really is that the presentation should inspire people. and motivate them to do their own King Scout Award. So when I did my King Scout Award, what I did was I went to my local Scout section that I volunteer with, and I presented it to them, and I actually packaged it up a little bit with some information on all the awards running up to the King Scout Award as well, so they actually know what the path looks like, and they can bear that in mind as they go from scouting to explorer scouting, and they can know exactly what to do to get to that King Scout Award. And obviously, when you actually get the certificate and the badges sent to you and presented to you, you can wear them, and they're going to be quite impressed, especially if you get it presented locally with them, present for it. Then it can actually drive them to do their own King Scout Award. And in a very real way, even if you inspire only one person in that hall to do their own King Scout Award, that's a lot of volunteering hours. That's a lot of improvement they're making to themselves by doing this, the skills and physical and all that kind of stuff, and the ICV values and nights away. It's a lot of development for a young person to go through. So if you inspire even just one person to do their own King Scout Award, you've made a real positive difference in the world, and it's a little bit of legacy there for you that you can sort of think, oh, back when you see those in a few years' time when they're explorers doing their own awards, you can sort of pat yourself on the back a bit and go, I helped inspire that. So something to bear in mind. That's one of the reasons why the presentation's so important. I would say put a little bit of effort into it, certainly. You want to have plenty of pictures, some videos, some funny slides even, to really inspire and engage the young people. I will say that when I did it, they were entirely engaged the entire time. I basically took up the full 2 hours of that particular session, because I went through all the awards and how to get them, and I also went through my own King Scout Award experience, my Duke of Edinburgh's experiences, and usually there's a lot of like muttering and stuff in the background when you're doing sort of scouting stuff. But they were absolutely fully engaged, and I asked a bunch of questions afterwards too, which is very, very cool. So it's very important you do this, and organizing this is very important, and getting it signed off is very important, because even if you do all the requirements and you don't get it presented and signed off in time, you're not going to get your award. So very important there. And remember that whatever you do, a commissioner who is not part of the process of, the rest of this will look at your King Scout Award logbook and completion form, and they will actually go, okay, I don't think this is up to X, or I don't think this is up to Y, or I think you should have done this instead. And that's even before it gets sent to Gilwell. So it goes through your local commissioner, I believe, then it goes off to county, then it goes up to Gilwell at the UK level, and then Gilwell very often apparently sends down questions and remarks about what's been sent up towards them. So do bear that in mind. Moving on. Moving on. It's highly recommended that you do your Duke and moving on. It's highly recommended that you do your Duke of Edinburgh's Gold Award as part of doing your King Scout Award. If you can't do your if you can't do your Duke of Edinburgh's Gold Award for any reason, then there are alternative sort of um, challenges you have to meet to be able to get your King Scout Award. But if you can, absolutely try and get your Duke of Edinburgh's Gold Award. Not only is that another internationally recognised qualification, but you get that very cool patch badge you can wear on your sleeve too, which is very nice, gold and white, very cool. And additionally, as part of this, you may as well complete your Young Leaders Award too. As we showed earlier in the ICV section, those sort of running evenings, planning activities, things like that, all count towards your Young Leaders Award. And those are pretty cool things, which I'm going to show you in just a second here. So moving on, we have the DV Gold Award requirements there in the center. Really, it's fairly similar in terms of structure to the bronze and silver awards. However, the thing you'll notice at the very bottom there is it says embark on a residential project for 5 days. Um, and then again, remember this doesn't count towards your nights away requirement for, as we showed earlier. This is separate. You can't count those 4 overnight stays as part of those nights away you need. But the residential essentially can be anything that you have to stay over for in a certain area, but it has to be with people you don't know. So you can't really go on a scout camp for this. It doesn't count. It has to be with people you have no idea about. And what I recommend really is if you go to some kind of charity event or you stay as a warden. If you don't know what a warden is, your local campsites, scout campsites at a local district or county level, they have to be maintained by some people, and those tend to be volunteers, volunteer scout leaders and things like that, who stay in the warden's hut there and just do the daily activities of upkeeping the camp. There's always vacancies for wardens going around. So if you were looking for a residential to do that was very easy to sign up for and everything, just ask about warden opportunities. It's a very good way of doing it. But looping back to the start here, as it says, you have to be 16 plus to attempt the Duke of Edinburgh's Gold Award. You have to take place over 18 months with this. And as it says there, you need to have done basically 12 months if you completed silver. If you skipped silver and went from bronze to gold, it acts as if you're new to DoV, because the step up from bronze DoV to gold DoV is so big that you don't really have any preparation really for it. But as it says there, this is one of the reasons why you want to, if you're an explorer, if you're a younger explorer, keep up on your sort of platinum awards and your diamond awards, is because it all comes together to make the process of getting things like your DV Gold or your King Scout Award to be a little bit easier and a little bit shorter, as it says here, by 6 months. And as part of that, as it says there, physical activity and a skill, develop 1 to 3 months over 6 months. It's worth mentioning, again, I think I mentioned this before, that really it has to be something new. You have to really be developing something from pretty much scratch when it comes to physical activity and skill, especially at a gold level. It tends to be a little more lenient on a silver and bronze level here, but at a gold level, your assessors and things will really pay attention to what you're choosing. So if you are, for example, a footballer and you've always done football for years, do not put football down for your physical activity, because A, you're not going to be able to show how much you developed in 3 months. It's probably not going to show any development at all. And B, chances are whoever's assessing you will probably know or be able to investigate into the fact that you've done that forever. And it's not in the spirit of DoV. The spirit of DoV is to broaden your horizons and try new things. It doesn't matter if you're good at them or not. It doesn't matter if you keep up with it after you finish the award. It's just that you tried it and you stuck with it. So you have to volunteer or do these activities for at least 1 hour a week for the duration of those months, and show that you've actually done some kind of improvement and you stuck with it essentially. So it's very important that you do that. Physical activity can be a whole bunch of different things. Maybe you've done a bunch of cricket or football or rugby, then do something like badminton, do something like rollerblading or whatever the case might be, archery. There's plenty of options to do things and develop them that are really interesting and outside of what you might normally do. And equally for skills, if you are particularly into your computers, don't do something like programming or whatever, because you're probably going to be fed up with that over 3 months, really, if you have to do an hour a week for 3 months. And if you do something that you're already good at, it's not going to be as interesting as learning something new. So do model making or whatever it might be. You can do shooting, probably things like that, which is quite cool. You get an air gun or something and do some shooting. That could be quite nice. Um, let's see. Moving on, we have the volunteering opportunity for 6 months. Um, I would highly recommend you do this within scouting. It's much easier to find volunteering opportunities very close to you. If you're an explorers, you're probably going to the same hut where there's a bunch of volunteering opportunities with scouts and cubs and beavers. So just do that, honestly. It's far easier to get that all sorted and signed off and it'll all be above board. And additionally, you can earn your Young Leaders Awards, which are at the bottom of the screen there that I'm going to mention in a second. Um, but below that, we have the expedition for 4 days and 3 nights in Wild Country. Um, this is something that I'm going to mention is that why you want to do this in scouting. You want to, with scouting, you want to get your expedition. Yeah. One thing I'm going to really emphasize here is that you want to do your expedition really with scouting. There's going to be plenty of opportunities to do this, but some people say, oh, it's easier to do Duke of Edinburgh with a school. Maybe it appears that way, but in reality, the chances are that the people going for Duke of Edinburgh's gold from schools have never done bronze or silver, and certainly have not got the years of experience as a scout that you do. So you're going to be partnered up with people that have zero experience of being outdoors for any extended period of time, looking after themselves, making sure they're hygienic, making sure they can walk properly, they can pack a backpack, they can wear their shoes properly and not hurt themselves. There's a lot of reasons as to why doing an expedition and scouting is so much better. Because I've seen personally while I've been doing hikes and various things, various different school groups doing Duke of Edinburgh's expeditions, even the gold ones that look like they're dead, that have, half their stuff hanging out the backpack, pots and pans hanging off the sides, rubbed feet, they haven't tied their shoes correctly, wet clothes, wet sleeping bags. I've seen people at campsites where their tents have like been half put up and the rain's come and blown into all their stuff and got them all wet during the night. There's a lot of reasons to why you want to go on an expedition with scouts or people who actually have those kinds of skills. Because the difference between having someone who's even had a couple of years of scouting and someone who's gone out there with no clue what they're doing, like, trust me, when you see, even scouts sometimes get quite lost on these kinds of expeditions. But I've heard horror stories of people getting lost for 3 or 4 hours, on each day on Duke of Edinburgh Gold expeditions or whatever, and basically been failed out because of it. And it's ridiculous because they can't even read a compass correctly or read a map correctly. It's mad. So I'd certainly do that because the chances are, statistically, a lot of people who attempt DV Gold without having done any prior work or having any prior experience of Scoutcraft, a lot of them fail. A lot of people bail out, and even if you're the best person on your particular team, if a couple of your people have to fail out for medical reasons because they've got tons of blisters on their feet or because their shoes weren't worn correctly, or you get horrifically lost because someone can't read a map, and then you have to, there's going to be times when potentially your assessor might go, you failed. And then even if you were the best person on that team, because everybody else on that team from your school was awful, you're not going to get it, and you've got to find another expedition in time. So definitely bear that one in mind, especially as there's been an announcement recently that the Duke of Edinburgh Awards, the administration for those, they're going to add in independent assessors and more oversight for things like schools who try to cheese and not quite complete in the right way the Duke of Edinburgh's award expedition. So I definitely do it with scouting because doing it with scouting is a breeze when everyone can land nav correctly and have done plenty of shorter but just as up and down hills and stuff hikes before. And obviously when you complete it, you feel like you've actually made an achievement. You've actually done something important and you've actually shown that you can go off this amount of time and really push yourself. So it's very, very cool to actually have done that expedition properly with scouting. Moving on, I've already covered the residential projects. We're not going to touch that too much. But again, those overnight stays don't count towards your nights away for your explorer scouting or your network scouting. And as it says there, obviously this all counts towards your King Scout Award. And just to touch on these awards at the bottom of the screen you see here, These are the Young Leaders Awards. On the right here, you have the woggle that you get from completing your core modules that you can wear as much as you'd like. On the left, you have an adult service ribbon that you get from completing your young leader training and things like that. And those are very hard to come by, I will say, and hardly any of the adult awards look anything near as colourful as this. A lot of them are white and grey with very little colour, and they certainly don't have an acorn on them. So having achieved your Young Leader Adult Service Recognition Award here, you can actually wear that on even your Explorer uniform, and it stays on your uniform forever, even when you're an adult leader. And it's another really cool thing to have. So even if you aren't looking to go into adult leadership once you've finished as an Explorer Scout, or whatever the case might be, if you make sure that you've earned that award, if you even in 20 years you have a kid of your own or whatever, and you want to be a leader for a bit, having that is quite nice because it shows that you've actually gone through scouting and you've done your part and you've shown your stuff off. So even if you don't complete other things like your Explorer Belt or your Scouts of the World Award or whatever the case might be, at least you have that to show for it. And in the center here we have the Young Leader Belt. There's only two belts that you can be awarded in scouting, this one and the Explorer Belt. And this goes to show sort of how important being a young leader is, that you sort of get a similar award to having gone for 10 days expedition in a foreign country. You get this for essentially just leading a bunch of sections, doing a bunch of leading a bunch of nights for a section. So it's very cool to have, and I'd certainly recommend doing it. And there's no other, you know, award in scouting that gives you three awards like this. So, and additionally, just as so easy how you get these young leader awards. It's just about giving back to scouting and helping out your local group from not disappearing because of lack of volunteers and things. So it goes to show how important that is and how valued it is, and how all three of these awards can be worn on your uniform forever is quite important. And if you're an Explorer Scout, you additionally get even some more badges that you can wear up to the point you join a Scout network, which is very cool. So if you haven't looked into your young leader training and things, and you've already done your bronze or silver, or you're doing your bronze or silver or your gold Duke and Venabris awards, then do ask somebody in your group or your district about them, because chances are you've already earned halfway or almost all the way towards your young leader awards. So do bear that in mind, because it's free recognition essentially, and it's stuff that stays with you rather than badges that come off once you leave the section. Okay, moving on. I'm just going to cover this very briefly. If you can't, for whatever reason, do your Duke of Edinburgh's Gold Awards, or there's been some kind of issue, you can instead do these. I'm just going to cover this very briefly. But if for whatever reason you couldn't complete your Duke of Edinburgh's Gold Awards, or you don't want to, or whatever the case might be, you can instead complete your King's Scout Award challenges here, which are just essentially the same things, but it is done outside of the Duke of Edinburgh framework. So if you have some kind of issue with that, then you can always talk to your district about this and see how to sign this off and things. But generally, I'd highly recommend going for the gold DOE route towards this. It's worth mentioning that I believe if you have disabilities or some kind of concern with how you do the Duke of Edinburgh's awards or the King Scout Award, there are allegations made for that, and on a scouting level and on a Duke of Edinburgh level, they can change the requirements around a little bit for you. But obviously, it's about pushing yourself and doing something that's difficult and that shows that you've developed. So, whatever is challenging for you and is genuinely challenging for you. I believe there's also some alternative awards out there, but talk to your district or your county about those. That's everything. Thank you for listening and good luck.